Okay, welcome everybody to the briefing meeting for the May Council meeting. I'll start with two conflicts of interest I've received. One from Councillor Honour in relation to H2 and one from Councillor McPhee in relation to T1. Are there any other conflicts that councillors have? Councillor Haberman.
Declaring conflict of interest in relation to item R2 in that I'm a life member of Bundaberg Cricket Association, but I'll be planning...
What was R2? Yes, which is now T3.
T3.
Yep.
Oh, sorry.
All right.
I had email yesterday.
Yep.
So, but I will be planning to stay. Fellow councillors see fit.
Okay, any other councillors have conflicts? All right. Did Councillor Honour and Councillor McPhee just want to highlight what your conflicts are?
Yes,
thank you.
Yes, Chairman. In relation to item H2, the sole supplier arrangement, Wagner CSD pedestrian bridge decking, the report author is my son, Dwayne Honour, who is branch manager of engineering. I have viewed the content of this. I fully believe that I can stay and vote on the matter.
Thank you, Councillor Honour. Councillor McPhee.
Thank you. Mine's for T1, land held in trust for religious purposes. I will be leading the meeting. I was a member of one of the churches for 13 years and I attended 3 or 4 times weekly. I'm heavily involved in all areas of the organisation. I wasn't aware of this at consultation because there wasn't owners' names or photographs of the building when we were discussing it.
Okay, thank you. All right. Oh, Councillor Haberman.
If that's a different item number, that will need to be changed on the attendance sheet. I put down R2 on the attendance sheet.
Okay, we'll change that to T3. Righto, thank you. All right, no other conflicts. We'll move on to the main part of the agenda. The first 2 items relate to petitions, D1 and D2, both for noting. A request for installation of speed limiting devices for traffic in Shelley Street, Burnett Heads, and a request for a path cycleway along Woodgate Road from Woodgate to Kincuna Waters Estate. Any questions or comments on those? No? Okay. The next item relates to a specialised supplier arrangement in relation to Council Community Satisfaction Survey. Ben.
This item here is seeking a resolution from Council to enter into a specialised supply arrangement with Jetty Research for the provision of the 2021 Community Satisfaction Survey without first inviting written quotes pursuant to Section 235B of the Local Government Regulation 2012. As councillors might be aware, we previously engaged Jetty Research to do the Community Satisfaction Survey 2 years ago, and they own the IP, the methodology and the process behind that survey. So we're seeking to directly appoint them so we can use that IP again without having to go back out to the market. And this arrangement would be in place until the 31st of March 2024.
Thanks, Mr. CEO. Ben, will the questions be exactly the same as last year?
Yeah, that's the intention. Yeah.
Okay.
Follow the same series of questions, so they're repeatable and predictable. We'll get answers that can be compared. Yep.
Any other questions? Thanks, Ben. The next 2 items relate to finance. Financial summary as of 4th of May. Simon, welcome.
Financial summary at 1st of May, just in terms of recurrent revenue. Fees and charges are more than the year-to-date budget, largely due to development in the region. We're expecting that the fees and charges overall for the financial year will come in above budget expectations in this regard. Interest revenue is above a year-to-date budget. primarily due to the fact we've got more cash than forecast. Again, we expect that that will come in above forecast. In terms of grants, the federal budget handed down earlier this month confirmed that the advance of the financial assistance grant will continue this financial year, so we're expecting $5.7 million to come through in June. That amount is yet to be confirmed from the department. And in other recurrent revenue, the land sales this year are expected to realise about $3.8 million, which was more than what we had in the half-year budget review. In terms of recurrent expenditure, materials and services are tracking lower than budget, with 50% of the non-capital projects currently being delivered so far this financial year, and that's the reason for the variance there. Year-to-date capital expenditure totaled $64.5 million, which represented 54% of the total program budget. There will be carryovers of project budgets into next year. Cash at the reporting date was $163.2 million. That is higher than forecast due to some of the variances referenced earlier. We will expect cash to decrease in the next 2 months, leading up to 30 June. Rates at the outstanding reporting date were $6.1 million. And just also noting that the rate arrears land sale process concluded in April, with one property being sold at auction and one proposed to be offered for sale by negotiation.
Questions or comments? Thanks, Simon. Councillor Trevor.
In light of the $1 billion from the federal budget to local government announced in the federal budget, I believe that there'll be another round, or another 2 or 3 rounds to distribute that money. Is it likely that the next round would be held and delivered prior to 30th of June?
Councillor Trevor, you're talking about the financial assistance grant?
No, I'm talking about the specific line item in the budget, the $1 billion to federal governments, which will be distributed, I understand, as same as we got that $4 million earlier in the year from that round.
Yeah, I think the local capital community, LCRI or something like that.
Footpath roads, community facilities, yep.
I'm not sure. Councillor Trevor will have to follow that one up and come back to you.
Thanks, Simon. Okay, no more questions on that. We'll move on to fees and charges.
Presented are the proposed 21-22 fees and charges. They've been generally increased by 2.5%. There are some exceptions to that, including rounding, where it's more appropriate to have the fee rounded. Most fees within the register will take effect of the 1st of July. Some will take effect at different dates, such as licensing and registration fees. Any questions on the register?
Councillor Trevor.
Mr Chairman, I'd like to give notice that at the general meeting I intend to move an amendment to the fees and charges, specifically with regards to footpath dining.
And I'll need to, if that's happening, I'll need to declare a conflict because we have footpath dining.
Yep, that's correct.
And what I intend to move that it be the same as the 19-20 budget, free for another 12 months.
Okay, and just for the purpose of the minutes, noting that Councillor McPhee was indicated that at the general meeting she'll then declare interest in that component of the fees and charges. Councillor Barnes.
Simon, 2.5% across the board increase?
That's correct. So most fees will have the 2.5% applied. There are some fees which have no increases. Some have gone up more than that, but that was the broad application for most fees.
Is it possible to get, for anything over 2.5%, an existing fee or charge and a proposed fee or charge?
That was provided to councillors as part of the consultation pack earlier this month. I'm happy to recirculate that.
No, that's okay. That hasn't changed, though?
No, what was presented at consultation earlier this month is what's in the register. The one amendment, or a couple of amendments were based on feedback from council during that meeting. That didn't result in any changes to fees, more just description to fees.
Yep, thank you. Thanks, Simon. Any other questions or comments? Nope. Okay, thank you. The next item is the minutes of the Audit and Risk Committee meeting and the charter. Thanks, Christine.
Councillors, the Audit and Risk Committee met on the 28th of January 2021, and the minutes are attached for Council's information. And the Audit and Risk Committee charter has also been reviewed, and that was endorsed recently by the Audit and Risk Committee, and it's now provided for Council's adoption.
Thanks, Christine. Questions or comments? No? All good, thank you.
The next item's G2, which is in relation to some sales at Kinkuna Waters Estate. One lot is in stage 1 for lot 1, and there's lot 74 in stage 2. Both properties have received offers from local real estate agents, and the offers are for market value. The property at lot 74 was validly terminated by the buyer back in May 2021. It's proposed that the exception in the local government regulation under 2361A1 be applied, given that the properties have previously been offered by auction or tender, and that the CEO be authorised to enter into the contracts with the buyers and attend to all items to finalise the sale of those properties.
Thanks, Christine. Questions or comments? No? All good?
The next item is G3. This is in relation to a sole supplier arrangement with NEOS Human Resources Proprietary Limited. So Council's presently been using NEOS as a means to benchmark the Stream A position descriptions and make sure that the proper levels are applied to those positions. The NEOS is a sole supplier. They're the only organisation that provides type of service to council, and it's proposed that council apply the exception under 235A, given that's a sole supplier arrangement, and that arrangement be in place for a period of 3 years.
Thanks, Christine. Questions or comments? Councillor McPhee.
I just had a quick question. The online job evaluation packs, are they for that? We purchase one of those for an actual role, not each time we recruit a person. Is that correct?
The online pack, so what happens is if we've got a new position description, or if there's changes to those descriptions with their skills or requirements, then we can go through the NEOS, which is a pack, to then benchmark with the changes in that description to make sure it's on the appropriate level under the Stream A award.
Oh yes, so it's not every time we recruit someone we need a new job evaluation pack, because if we're recruiting someone for the same particular role, we would refer back to that. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. So it's only when it's changed, or if it's a new position, that we run it through the NEOS as the need arises.
Thanks, Christine. Questions? Comments? No? All good, thank you. Infrastructure sole supplier arrangement. Stuart?
Morning. Part of our stormwater network involves concrete pits which have some components called lintels and lids, which historically for parts of our network were purchased from Wholesome. The componentry across our network from the various suppliers isn't interchangeable, so when we maintain these specific pits we need to buy the components from the original manufacturer. So the recommendation that is in front of you is that we enter into an arrangement with Wholesome under the exceptions of the regulation without seeking competitive bids first for that reason.
Thanks, Stuart. Questions or comments? Councillor McPhee.
I had a question. I had to Google what a lintel and lid was. Is that normal practice, Stuart? You mentioned they're not interchangeable between different suppliers. Do all of the other suppliers have specific dimensions? So is this a normal practice in the industry?
Yeah, now we have development engineering standards. So the standard drawings now mean that we're standardised for any new infrastructure. This only deals with historical stuff that was built, we've got, I think, 3 or 4 different historical standards, so this isn't the only one. There is another particular section of our network where we manufacture the lintels ourselves because we can't get a supplier to manufacture them at all.
Yeah.
And they are very expensive to manufacture for ourselves because of economies of scale.
Yep.
But this one in particular we can buy from the supplier, so that's what we're recommending we continue to do.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stuart. Any other questions on that one? No? Wagner's.
Yep. So, councillors, the next one again is seeking to utilise the exemptions under Section 235A of the Local Government Regulation, and this is in relation to work being done on the Saltwater Creek Rail Bridge, which is now a pedestrian bridge. The development approval that we've got from the Department of Environment and Science refers to the engineering drawings that were provided by our consultants, which include a particular type of decking which is only available from Wagner's, not available from any other supplier. So we're recommending that council enter into an arrangement with Wagner's to enable us to buy that particular material so we can satisfy the conditions of our development approval, and that it's a one-off engagement for this particular project.
Thanks, Stuart. Questions or comments? No? All good, thank you. Michael, development application.
Good morning, councillors. There you go. Councillors, this item relates to a development application to subdivide land at 35 Kirby's Road, Kalki, into 7 lots over 2 stages. The first stage will see the creation of lots 101 and 102 fronting Kirby's Road, with the existing dwelling house retained on lot 20 as a sort of balance lot. Stage 2 then sees the further subdivision of lots 101 and 102 into 6 lots, all of about an acre in size, or 4,050 square metres. Councillors, you note that this development a similar development has been to council previously, back in 2017. And that proposal was refused. The reasons for that are outlined in section 3 of the report, but suffice to say, at that time the planning scheme didn't support development in this area. It was in the rural zone of the scheme. Effectively all that land north of Sowers Road, between Sowers and Kirby's Road, was in rural. And as a result, so what's changed between now and then? Well, as a result of amendments to the planning scheme, this land's now included in the emerging community zone, and that emerging community zone then calls up the local plan for that area. The other thing that's changed too is that at the time of the first application, there was a watercourse mapped through the site that sort of intersected Kirby's Road in the vicinity of the boundary of lot 101 and the access handle that leads to the house on lot 20. The Department of Agriculture and Fishery have actually updated their mapping since then, and that branch of the sort of waterways in that area was removed and effectively is classified as a drainage feature currently, so it doesn't trigger the assessment provisions of watercourses in the planning scheme. In assessing the merits of the application, I won't go into the details other than say that's detailed in the report. The application has found that the two main constraints on the site the designation under the local plan as open space / environmental protection and flooding. Dealing with the first, I think the first pertinent point I can make is that in the planning scheme, this designation is not cadastre based. It is dealt with as a sort of floating line between the boundary of where urban development should be and what should be protected for environmental or open space purposes, and the scheme makes it clear that the definitive line about where the boundary between those two things should be determined at the development assessment stage. Now that line effectively is determined by the ability to protect the watercourse that runs largely behind lots 101 and 102 in stage 1, and then sort of comes out across Kirby's Road and runs further to the north and then eventually into the Burnett River on the boundary with the adjoining property to the west and lot 20. The second part of that is the extent of flooding. And you will see attached to the report is a comprehensive, there's two sort of reports that have been prepared to address these issues. The first is a vegetation or a sort of waterways management plan that details the applicant's proposal to rehabilitate that waterway, including replanting of riparian zone type species and actually improve the environmental values of the watercourse. The second is a flood management plan, and effectively how the developer intends to deal with flooding on the site is to do balance cut and fill. So the 6 lots fronting Kirby's Road will be filled to above the DFL, and that will be balanced by additional material being removed from the floodplain to make sure that there's additional, so that the lost flood storage is regained and there's no net impact on the amount of flood storage on this site. The engineer's report that was accompanying the application does indicate that there is a slight increase less than 30 millimetres or 3 centimetres on the adjoining property, but that is within an area that is a dam on that property that is effectively on the watercourse, and that increase is contained within the height of the wall of that dam, so there will be no impact on flooding or property rights effectively on the adjoining property. So with those two things and with the increased sort of environmental outcomes that development will deliver, the officers agree that it's appropriate that those 6 lots fronting Kirby's Road are suitable for rural residential type development. It will help provide that interface between the rural uses further to the north that the planning scheme envisages, and then more intensive urban development that will occur further to south in the balance of this growth area. Beyond that, councillors, the only other thing to note is that as a result of a submission that was received during public notification, we're alerted to the use of the site, chemicals, use of chemicals on the site as part of the previous agricultural use of the land. The site is on the contaminated land register, and you'll see that their conditions have been imposed that they'll have to obtain clearance for that before that they are allowed to proceed with any works on the site. So, councillors, subject to the conditions detailed in the recommendations, including the need to do that rehabilitation of the watercourse, finalise the extent of the earthworks necessary, and to deal with the contamination issues, is recommended that this development be approved.
Thanks, Michael. Comments or questions? Councillor McPhee.
Just a quick question, Michael. Is this back before council? Because originally it was rejected. Is that?
Councillor Maher, this application was called to council by Councillor Barnes.
Oh, okay. Thank you. And one other question, just to clarify the submission, that was against the proposal only because of the contaminated land.
The submission raised a number of issues, most of which I've already touched on, but in summary they were that the land was designated for open space environmental protection, that the application incorrectly showed the location of the watercourse, that the application didn't address impacts on adjoining properties from stormwater flooding, and what was the final? And the contaminated land issue, and something about levels for access into lot 20. So I think that how they're addressed is detailed in the report, but by and large, those issues can either be dealt with by a condition or are just based on a misunderstanding of the application material.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. Any other questions or comments? Nope. Thank you, Michael. Gavin, welcome.
Dealing with item 01, partnership and sponsorship program. So we've had a request in writing from the CEO of Royal Flying Doctor Service, RFDS Queensland branch, seeking council's ongoing support to the tune of $50,000 under our partnership and sponsorship program. Councillors would be aware that last year both RFDS and Lifelight constructed a joint aeromedical precinct out at the airport. It was opened in March last year, or officially opened in March last year, and they've been operating from there since. Last financial year we provided matching donations to both Lifelight and RFDS to the tune of $50,000, and council might remember in the most recent council meeting, council signed off on a further $50,000 for Lifelight this year. RFDS have now sought, obviously, the comparable donation and have requested it through our normal process. We do have, the Councillor Mitchell would be happy to know it is in budget, because we had expected that they would come back after the discussion we had with them and approval last year, so there was $50,000 allocated in the current financial year for this particular purpose. Happy to take any questions if there are any.
Gavin, with the obviously the number of years of consultation that we've had with Royal Flying Doctor and Lifelight, the positioning of these two facilities at the airport and the large investment by a number of areas at levels of government, is it true that that has significantly increased in the reduction of more or less anxiety, but issues involving closeness in when we have a disaster in relation to evacuations?
Mike, Mr Mayor.
Yeah. Is that, by having a facility there, is help facilitate a greater
I think I understand where you're coming from, Mr Mayor. Yes, yes. One of the beauties of the patient transfer facility, they call it, is under the old system where RFDS used to operate effectively out of hangar 161 at the airport. Because the hangar is on airside, it would mean that any patient's family members or anyone else couldn't go with them to the point and wait until they were airlifted out. With the new facility, because it effectively is, the building is split airside and landside, patients have effectively a waiting room, a waiting area where they get treated by the paramedics, because effectively the ambulance had to drive onto airport land previously. They don't have to do that with the new facility, and so the patient's loved ones can stay with them until they're actually medevaced out. So that's been an improvement, I guess, in both patient anxiety before they're leaving, obviously loved ones who don't know what's happening at that point in time and previously were left isolated because of the issues about having to be airside, So that's dramatically improved the way they deal with those particular things. It's also made it easier for RFDS and others because the facility obviously is more modern than the current one. They can respond quicker because they're able to store more equipment and provide a higher level of service than they previously could in the old hangar.
Yeah, and just to add to that, just in the area of disaster management, would you like to make comment in relation to that?
Certainly, I guess both the Life Flight and RFDS provide valuable service, particularly when it comes to moving patients. I mean, councillors are aware that there's a significant level of treatment that's required that's above the local capacity of the Ybay Hospital and Health Service, and so people need to be medevac to Brisbane for significant treatment. So if we did have incidents or issues that resulted in significant injury, then the capacity that they've now got at the new facility is far greater than they previously had. So if we had a major incident, they'd be able to get them out quicker.
Thanks.
Thanks, Kev. Any other questions comments on that one? No? Okay, next one is a lease renewal. Christine.
O2 is in relation to a lease renewal for Rum City Motorcycle Club. They're presently under lease, which is due to expire on the 30th of June 2021 at Bingra Weir Road, South Bingra. The club's wishing to enter into a new 10-year lease with council. It'll be at the community rate and they'll be responsible for 100% of their outgoings, and it's proposed that the remaining terms will be on council's standard lease document. Council officers suggest that we apply the exception contained in section 2361B2 of the local government regulation, given that the renewal of a lease is to the community organisation, and that the CEO be authorised to enter into that 10-year lease with the club.
Thanks, Christine. Comments or questions? No? All good. Thank you.
The next item is item 03, which is about a lease to the Ybay Hospital and Health Services. This is the old Tourist Information Centre, and returning councillors will recall back in November 2019, council did make a resolution to enter into a 5-year lease with the tenant. However, the resolution didn't reflect the terms that were negotiated for the lease. The hospital came back to council and asked for a further 2 years on their term to be 7 years. Given that the site is a reserve, you're not able to have an option. So because you can't have an option under the lease, they requested the longer term. So the resolution that's recommended for council to adopt is that council rescind the second part of the resolution that was made at its November 2019 meeting and replace that with the CEO be authorised to enter into a lease with the Ybay Hospital and Health Services for a term ending on the 2nd of June 2027.
Thanks, Christine. Question, Councillor Honour.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to ask a question in relation to the public toilets that are behind that facility that are open to all of the public. Is that included in that lease, or is that council's?
No, it's not. So the lease area that they've got is just the building footprint. It's not the whole of that lot. Yep.
So that belongs to council to maintain and
that's correct. Yep.
Thank you. Any other questions? Comments? No? Thanks, Christine. Gav, RADF.
So we're dealing with the acronyms today. Today's RADF, this one. Report 04. So council's aware that we regularly do rounds under the Regional Arts Development Fund, call for requests for submissions. They're then assessed by a committee. In this particular round, we received 5 applications under the RFDF scheme for a total of $46,745. After assessment, all of those will receive either partial or full funding. And I wasn't going to go through each individual one, but I'm happy to take any questions if there are any. No questions? Nope.
All good?
Okay, councillors, our next item is R1, so Bundaberg Cycling Club, I won't call them BCC. They've previously ran the Cycle Fest International event, which council had entered into a 3-year funding agreement for. It was on a sliding scale of funding with the view that with events, obviously, we're trying to seek to make them sustainable. So in the first year, which was 2019, council provided $15,000 in funding. We committed to year 2 $10,000 in funding, and year 3 2021, which is $5,000. The event is traditionally held at the start of the year, so they were able to get the year 2 event in just before COVID hit, but unfortunately this year they had to cancel it. Particularly because they had attracted historically international riders. It's a pretty prestigious event, goes towards Olympic points and others, but couldn't have it because of international restrictions on travel this year. So they have asked instead if that money that was council determined would fund back in 2018, whether we would repurpose that for a new event they're calling the Bundaberg Spectacular Track Carnival, which they're proposing to have this year. So the request is to reallocate the $5,000 that council had previously approved for the Cycle Fest International event and use that instead for the Bundaberg Spectacular Track Carnival. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Kev. Questions or comments? No? All good? Thank you. Yeah, and the last 3 items then are in confidential. We can terminate the live feed.